Hello, 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 hello. How are you doing? Welcome to the broadcast tonight. Tonight is the midnight hour, reading you to sleep. And tonight I'm still continuing from our book, The Law of Choice. The Law of Choice. And we are on chapter number 3. Regret, responsibility, and renewal. Regret, responsibility, and renewal. The sting of regret. The sting of regret. Regret is a universal human experience. At some point, every person reflects on a decision and wonders, what if I had chosen different? It's the emotional residue of a choice that misaligned with our deepest values or long-term vision. Yet, regret, yet regret, yet regret is not our enemy. It is a signal, a mirror, and a teacher. Consider Jacob, who deceived his father Isaac and stole his brother Esau's blessing. And I'm referencing from Genesis the chapter 27. That one decision fractured a family and haunted him for years. It haunted him for years. But in the end, Jacob wrestled with God and his identity was changed. He became Israel. His regret didn't disqualify him, it redirected him. Therefore, regret doesn't mean you are doomed. So tonight, what we are reading, regret, responsibility, and renewal, is not about feeling doomed, feeling condemned, but to help us accept the responsibility and make a renewal. So regret doesn't mean you are doomed, it means you are human. And when faced with regret, you have two options: to wallow in what was or to rise into what can be. Take the story of Sharon, a corporate executive who prioritized work over family. For years, she missed birthdays, school plays, and quiet dinners. In her late 40s, her marriage was strained and her teenage daughter barely spoke to her. The weight of regret was crushing. But instead of despairing, she chose differently. She stepped down from her role, started attending therapy with her daughter, and began rebuilding her family. It took years, but healing came because the responsibility fell on her and she responded to the regret. In 2 Corinthians, the chapter number 7, the verse number 10, we read that godly sorrow brings repentance that leads to salvation and leaves no regret. But worldly sorrow brings death. I say it's okay to yawn at this time because the goal is to bring you to sleep. So Oh, thank you, Jesus. The right kind of regret leads to renewal. So let's look at taking responsibility. The power of choice also carries the weight of consequence. One of the most liberating yet challenging truths is that where you are today is as a result of the decisions you've made or failed to make. Let me take it again. One of the most liberating yet challenging truths is that where you are today is a result of the decisions you've made or failed to make. This can be hard to accept. It's easier to blame circumstances, to blame parents, partners, or systems, but blame keeps us powerless. Responsibility puts us back in the driver's seat. Think of the parable of the prodigal son in Luke chapter 15. He squandered his inheritance, ended up feeding pigs, and hit rock bottom, but everything changed the moment he said, I will arise and go to my father. That was a decision, a turning point, a moment of ownership. Real life example. Marcus was in his mid 30s, stuck in a cycle of debt and the achievement. For years, he blamed the economy, his upbringing, and even his friends. Then one day, sitting in his tiny apartment, he had a realization, an epiphany. No one is coming to save me. He got up, enrolled in a night course, cut off toxic friendships, and started budgeting. 5 years later, he owned a small business and helped others do the same. Your life can change when you stop pointing fingers and start raising your hand. In Galatians chapter 6, the verse number 5, it says that for each one should carry their own load. Responsibility is not guilt, it is empowerment. It is the sacred recognition that God has given you the power to choose again. The road to renewal. Renewal begins not with a new environment, but a new decision. Romans chapter 12, verse 2 urges us not to conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That renewal happens every time we choose truth over lies, hope over despair, and purpose over passivity. Renewal is not always immediate. Sometimes it takes time. Seeds take time to grow, but every good harvest begins with a planting. Take Joy, a recovering alcoholic. For years, she lived in shame, believing she had disqualified herself from love, ministry, and meaning. But one day, she walked into a church, chose to surrender, and began her healing. One decision led to another: therapy, community service. 10 years later, she now leads a recovery ministry. Her scars became her strength. Therefore, know that renewal is the reward of responsibility. Isaiah 61, the verse 3 says that God's ability to give a crown speaks of God's ability to give a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and the garment of praise instead of the spirit of despair. Therefore, when you choose responsibility and align with divine truth, beauty, rises from brokenness. And that brings us to the end of this chapter. I will read one more chapter for the night. But before we get there, I want us to take a look at some reflective questions or exercises, something to get you thinking. I want you to identify one decision in your life that you deeply regret. What is that one decision in your life that you deeply regret? What values did this decision violate? And what did it teach you? What values? Because anytime we make a decision where there is regret, it means we have violated a value. There are certain values in our lives that we have violated, and that is why we go through a moment of feeling regret. So I want you to think of one decision that you've made that you regretted. What value did that decision violate, and what did it teach you? As you ponder about that, I strongly recommend there are other reflective exercises in the book. I always try to give you just one, so please, I strongly encourage you to get a copy. You can find all my books if you type my name, Dr. Vincent Opon, in Amazon. All the books that I've written will show up, and you can grab a copy. And I know without a shadow of doubt that it will bless you. Let's look at the chapter number 4 from the book, The Law of Choice, Painting the Masterpiece of Your Life. And this is the midnight hour reading you to sleep. Consequences, the mirror of choices. Consequences reflects choices. Every decision you make paints a stroke on the canvas of your life. Some strokes are bold, others are beautiful. Some are hesitant and uncertain, and a few may even feel like mistakes that you wish you could erase. But each one matters. And when you take a step back, what you see staring back at you is the consequence, the mirror image of your choices. Oh, celebradoskia. Whether you embrace them or try to escape them, the consequences are inescapable. Help us. They are not punishments, they are reflections. They are feedback and invitations to deeper awareness. In this chapter, we want to confront the idea that consequences are neither inherently good or bad. They are messengers revealing the truth about how we show up, what we value, and where we've placed our power. Therefore, if you are willing to look into the mirror with courage, you can learn, adapt, and realign. But if you keep turning your face away, blaming others, and ignoring what life is trying to teach you, the lessons will only return louder and even more demanding. The consequences, they never lie. They tell you exactly what your choices have created. Number one, we want to look at consequences revealing patterns. One of the most empowering shifts that you can make in life is to view consequences as data. They are the results of inputs, the cause and effect of every decision, every action, and every hesitation. So you want to look closely and you will begin to notice the patterns. Renee had gone through three failed business partnerships. Each time she felt betrayed, used, and left to clean up the financial mess. Initially, she blamed the partners, but eventually, after sitting with a coach, she saw the pattern. She had a habit of ignoring red flags, rushing into agreements and without even clear contracts and choosing charm over competence. Her consequences weren't random misfortunes, they were mirrors reflecting the decisions she repeatedly made. Therefore, consequences are not cosmic punishments, they are natural outcomes. If you consistently ignore your intuition, settle for less, or procrastinate on what matters most, the results will show. Conversely, if you take small, consistent steps toward your goals, build healthy boundaries, and act with integrity, you will see the fruits of that too. The mirror doesn't judge, it simply reveals. Mirrors doesn't judge, they simply reveal. Number two, we want to look at embracing accountability. Facing consequences requires a radical accountability. It means dropping the blame game and recognizing that while you may not control everything that happens to you, you do have power over how you respond and what you choose next. Marcos spent years resenting his ex wife after their painful divorce. He blamed she had ruined their marriage. But during a men's retreat, he was challenged to look deeper. He realized, he realized that he had emotionally checked out long before she did, prioritizing work and leaving her in to carry the emotional burden of the relationship. The consequence of the divorce was a reflection of many unattended decisions. When he owned that, healing began. Accountability isn't about self blame, it's about self ownership. When you take full ownership of your choices and their consequences, you reclaim your agency. You stop being a victim of circumstance and become a creator of new possibilities. Learning without shame. One of the reasons people avoid looking at their consequences is because of shame. We fear being seen as failures, making mistakes, or being judged. But growth doesn't happen in shame. It happens in honesty. You can make poor decisions without being a poor person. You can learn from your past without living in it. Sophia made a bad investment decision that cost her entire savings. So, for months, she beat herself up, questioning her intelligence and instincts. Eventually, she began journaling about the experience, joined a financial literacy group, and started over. She, what she once saw as her biggest failure, became the foundation of her future wisdom. The purpose of consequences is not to condemn you, but to educate you. Mistakes are part of the process. You can forgive yourself and learn from what happened. You become wiser, stronger, and more equipped for what comes next. Now, the power of response. The power of response. When life hands you a consequence, you have two choices: react emotionally or respond intelligently. Reactions are impulsive and often fueled by ego, pride, or fear, but responses, however, are thoughtful, reflective, and rooted in clarity. I want to take that again. Reactions are impulsive and often fueled by ego, pride, and fear, but responses are thoughtful, reflective, and they are rooted in clarity. Welcome, Her Excellency. Good to have you. So, after being passed over from a promotion, David felt angry and humiliated. His first impulse was to quit, but after taking a weekend to reflect, he asked for a feedback from his supervisor, uncovered blind spots in his communication style, and worked on them. 3 months later, he was offered a leadership role in a different department. His growth came not from the disappointment, but from how he responded to it. Again, if you are just tuning in, this is the midnight hour reading you to sleep. I come here every midnight or 11 p.m. if you are in the central um, standard time zone. And my goal is to read to you, to put you to sleep. And not just that, but to give you some things to think about, because it is in this midnight hour when sleep eludes you that the enemy give you things to think about. So I come as a distraction, or if you will, your personal trainer to fight the enemy with you, right? By giving you some things to think about so that your mind is not idle for the devil to have access to you. So let's finish this chapter and we will call it a night. Every consequence offers a choice. Will you spiral into regret, bitterness, and blame, or you will pause, learn, move forward, even with greater wisdom? Let's look at rewriting your future. Consequences are not the end of your story. They are pages in the middle of your book. I want you to pay attention to these words here. They are pages in the middle of your book. Your decisions are the beginning of the pages. The consequences are the middle pages. The renewal is the last pages. You can always turn the page. You can always write a different ending. It starts with new decisions, new standards, and new relationships with yourself. After struggling with addiction and a series of broken relationships, Jamal found himself homeless. The consequence of years of pain, escapism, and denial was staring him in the face. One night, sitting outside in a shelter, he wrote himself a letter. And this was what he wrote: "This is not who I am. This is what I chose, but I can choose differently." And that decision or letter became the seed of recovery for Jamal. Today, years later, Jamal has become a mentor to others, and he shares his story of redemption and responsibility. I want you to know that you are never stuck unless you choose to be stuck. The consequences of your past do not have to define what your future will be like. They can guide you, they can teach you, they can redirect you only if you are willing to listen to what we are saying. And if you are willing to get a copy of my book, The Law of Choice, Painting the Masterpiece of Your Life, then you can redirect and make a positive comeback at the end of whatever the previous decisions were. So, here are a couple reflective questions or exercises that I have for you to think about. I want you to identify one major consequence in your life right now. It could be anything, maybe financially, maybe relationally, maybe emotionally, or even in your spiritual journey. What is one major consequence in your life right now? I want you to think about it. And as you think about it, I want you to add this. What decision led to that outcome? What decision led to that outcome? What decision led to that outcome of regret or the consequence? The last one I want to give you, because like I said, I always have a lot of reflective things. As you can see, I gave you a whole page to write. Right, but the one I want to ask is that what patterns do you see repeating itself in these consequences that you are facing right now? Because it's funny but sad that most of the times, if you don't pay attention, if you don't have some of these things to help you reflect on what your decisions and your choices have been, you will keep repeating the same thing. Some people say, why do I keep attracting the same losers in my life? Why do I keep making the same mistakes in business? Why do I keep making the same connections with the same type of people? It's because you are not reflecting, you are not analyzing, you are not going back to renew or review what your choices have been and the patterns that has been. And so you are not making a well-informed decision. And on that note, I'll leave you here for tonight. This has been the Midnight Hour, reading you to sleep. Again, as I always say, I come to distract you, if you will, to be your inspiration, to prevent the enemy from giving you thoughts that is not in alignment with the mind and the thought of God. So if you are not asleep yet, please go back to the recording and watch again. Listen to it over and over again as you go to bed, and I know that you wake up more wiser than you went to bed. And with that said, I wish you a good night. Have a sound sleep. I'll see you, God willing, tomorrow. Good night.